In a world overrun by neocon warmongers, and with the mass media in the pockets of the cabal elite, there remains one bastion of truth amidst the confusion. One beacon of light shining through the murky fog of spin and Islamophobic propaganda. That's right, it's the NP Radio Security Council. The final frontier in the fight for freedom and fairness. I give you the Security Council.
أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد عن خطى الإيمان دربنا درب قويم دربنا درب قويم بالهدى القرآني أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد عن خطى الإيمان دربنا درب قويم دربنا درب قويم بالهدى القرآني سائر في طريق الحق يا جند الله.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. You're listening to Middle Path Radio, and this is the Security Council. I'm your brother Ahmed for tonight's show, and with me in the studio, as always, I've got Mr. Producer and brother Khabbab here on my right. How you doing, brother Khabbab?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah.
What's going on?
Good.
You good?
Inshallah, yeah.
Yeah, very exciting show.
I am very looking forward to today's
smiling. I'm going to be enjoying this one tonight.
I think it's full of Django's today.
There's too many Django's for tonight's show. So we're going to give out a quick list for the nominations for this week's Django of the Week. Just to remind us again, Brother Khabbab, as to what Django of the Week really is.
Django of the Week is our Middle Path Radio's Hall of Shame. It's literally for everybody who is the low life of the week, the one who is,
a disgrace to the human race, as we like to put it.
You got away words there.
Yeah, so who are the nominations for this week?
Well, the nominations, and they'll all be revealed through the stories of today, but not in particular order. But we have got Abul Tahir, the reporter for Daily Mail.
Abul Tahir.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then we have number 2 is Inderdeep Baines, another reporter for the Daily Mail.
She's made it into the
she's made it into the list. Yep. The third one is Michael Gove, the former education minister.
Yes.
And then the last but not least,
self-professed Zionist, Mr. Michael
course,
Gove.
Yeah. Last but not least is another self-professed Zionist as well, which is President Barack Obama.
Barack Hussein Osama. I mean Obama. So we've got four guys here, guys and one gal. Abu Tahir from Daily Mail, Inderdeep Baines, also I believe
from Daily Mail.
Okay, Michael Gove, former Education Secretary, and of course the President of the United Snakes of America, Barack Obama. Let's continue. So if you guys think somebody's really edged it this week, after you probably hear some of our coverage from this week's story rather, you might want to put forward a hashtag, Django of the Week, and put their name that you think meets the criteria.
And it is Django with a Jango. There is not a D on this one. Unfortunately, the D's are the heroes. These are the non-heroes.
So this is a Django with just a Jango. Okay, Django of the Week, one word. Hashtag that. And put forward your recommendations for this week's Django of the Week. Abul Tahir, Inderdeep Baines. We've got Michael Gove and Barack Obama. Mr. Producer, you got something to say? We just want to also, he's reminding us to welcome all of our international listeners. Yes, sometimes we forget to mention it, but we haven't actually forgotten you. We do know we have
worldwide coverage.
Yeah, listeners from, across the pond, often from the United States, sometimes from the Arab world as well.
And from Washington and so forth.
Definitely the people from Washington, was it Langley normally? Yeah, it's all right, guys. I know you're listening. But anyway, it's a little bit of harmless fun on the Security Council. So, we're going to start with our first story, for which we're going to play you a short clip. While Mr. Producer gets that ready, it's actually a clip that we are going to play from a Vice News article. Now, many of you should be familiar now with Vice News. They've been working in different parts of the world, and they have a very colourful variety of news stories. And one of the things that they've done, which has launched them into, let's say, a level of notoriety that we didn't know them for, was that they embedded themselves as investigative journalists or embeds really with ISIS. Well, that's according to what they say. I've seen a few videos of theirs, and they have been covering the Syrian revolution from a very early stage. So this is what the guys from Vice had to say when they managed to secure an interview with none other than with Mr. Barack Hussein Obama.
That's president to you.
Mr. President Barack Hussein Obama. I do not salute you, sir. Okay? So, you know, really, you are deservedly a good nomination for Django of this week. You are a disgrace to the human race, Mr. Barack Obama.
And a terror apologist.
That's right. You are indeed an apologist for ISIS, a terrorism apologist, just like those others from Cage. Yes, you know, you seem to be making excuses as to why terrorism exists. You've actually said something very out of the ordinary. I think this is probably your Bush moment, shall we say. You've stumbled big time on this one. And
you read the book upside down.
Yeah. Where was your guy in your ear feed, you know, telling you, Mr. Obama, don't be saying that, stop, you know, that's not on the script. You know, where was the guy who was supposed to be helping you with this? I think this is the first time he went.
I think he was watching a Cage video before he went online.
He must have seen the press conference by Cage and he thought, okay, you know what, let me go give an
nail
interview.
on the head.
Yeah, these guys know what they're talking about. Okay, so I'm going to go out there and echo exactly the same thing that they've been saying. Have we got the clip ready, Mr. Producer? We're going to go straight with the clip now.
We embedded with ISIS, ISIL last summer for a month.
أنا اسمي داوود عمري 14 سنة أحب أن أصير بدولة الإسلام في العراق والشام وأقاتل معهم.
One of the biggest questions that I had was, how did they become so popular so fast? How did they get so many foreign fighters from America, from the UK, you know, from Scandinavia, from all over the world, go there, outstrip Al-Qaeda almost overnight?
Yeah.
And so A, how did they become so popular out of nowhere? And then B, how do we stop them?
Two things. One is ISIL is a direct outgrowth of Al-Qaeda in Iraq that grew out of our invasion.
They're
That
responsible
grew
for
out
something
of
much
our
bigger.
invasion.
They're responsible
out
for the
of our
creation of
invasion.
ISIS that gave him the order to execute. Why do I say this? I told you before, dear brothers and sisters, that when I was in Bagram, they said to me, if you don't cooperate, we'll send you to Egypt or to Syria. As we have sent a man called Ibn Sheikh al-Libi. And Ibn Sheikh al-Libi was a Libyan man who was tortured in Bagram and then sent to Egypt, where he was waterboarded and electrocuted, and he was made to give a confession that was used by the Americans as a justification to invade Iraq. As a result of that invasion, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi came in and set up his organization, Al-Jamaat al-Jihad wa Tawheed, in Iraq, which didn't exist before the invasion. That organization then later transformed into Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and then into Islamic State in Iraq, and then when it moved on into Syria, Islamic State of Iraq and Sham, and then into Islamic State. A direct causal link. You can follow the trajectory.
ISIL is a direct outgrowth of Al-Qaeda in Iraq that grew out of our invasion, which is an example of unintended consequences, which is why we should generally aim before we shoot. Aim before we shoot.
We're watching you right back.
So what you heard there, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who've just joined us, is a short clip right at the beginning, which I have to say is an edited portion from Vice's interview. Vice News did the interview with Barack Obama, and some of the supporters, I don't know who actually put this video clip together, has been sharing it on social media. What it has is Barack Obama effectively answering this question, all right? And the question that was put to him by the Vice News journalists was this: A, how did ISIS become so popular out of nowhere? And B, how do we stop them? Barack Obama replies by saying two things. One, One is ISIL or ISIS is a direct outgrowth of Al-Qaeda in Iraq that grew out of our invasion, which is an example of unintended consequence, which is why we should generally aim before we shoot. Let me repeat. He says, one is ISIL is a direct outgrowth of Al-Qaeda in Iraq that grew out of our invasion, which is an example of unintended consequence.
I think he just misread some of the words, which is a direct. Is it? What was the last point you mentioned?
He said, which is an example of unintended
consequence. I think he's meant to say terror apologist. Sorry.
It obviously looks like something that Mr. Obama is apologizing for. He seems to be an apologist for terror, or ISIS rather, because the narrative that the nation's public have been led to believe is that these monsters of ISIS were always there. They aren't rational. They're just nutters who hate America. And they just envy us for our freedoms and our laws and liberties.
And if you choose to try to work out or figure out how they came to existence, you'll be straight away brandished
why they do what they do
as a terror apologist.
That's right. You know, what's his name? The second part of the clip you heard was actually very much the same thing being said by Muazzam Beg. Now, Brother Muazzam Beg, obviously, I think one of the founders of Cage, formerly known as Cage Prisoners. He's himself a former Guantanamo Bay detainee. You heard his speech following what Mr. Obama had to say. And effectively, he was saying the exact same thing. The American invasion created, or the formation of ISIS took place after the Americans invaded Iraq. It was a response, a direct response to the American invasion. There was no ISIS before the invasion. There was no need for ISIS before the invasion. So it's shocking to hear in the very week or last week or so, week or two, that we've been hearing when Cage did their press conference and have been saying through their website and other press releases for many I would say even years, that British foreign policy leads to more terrorism. British wars, or American wars rather, the Allied forces interfering in Muslim lands creates a lot of resentment, contempt and bitterness for the West. And often people over there turn to violence because we have exported our American violence and British violence to their home countries.
That just makes you a terror sympathizer, doesn't it?
Exactly. This was the argument that was being put forward when Cage, and not only Cage, by the way, we've heard people like Azhar Bukhari talking about foreign policy very often. We've had a lot of people talking about, from the Muslim community, pointing at bloody wars waged by UK and the US in the Muslim world, creating these rebel groups and this kind of a violent reaction. It didn't seem something really strange until Cage recently tried to add a lot more credibility to this argument of theirs, what Barack Obama effectively said, okay? But they singled out one particular individual. Let's say he is ISIS's poster boy, Mohammed Emwazi. Okay, and Cage tried to, of course, we've covered this before, Cage tried to explain how he wasn't the same person when he was here in the UK. And they tried to explain through also Emwazi's own writings and recordings that they've got with interviews with Emwazi. Okay, you know, Emwazi has reported that he was harassed by the security services here in the UK. He even alleged that he was being abused and strangled by British officers here in the UK. And of course, the security services have not come out to deny any of this. And he goes further to say that they made his life such a hell because they managed to call off his wedding plans with his fiancée twice, right? They had somehow received information that he was being investigated for so-and-so offences, which he always denied. There's up till today no proof that he was involved in any form of illegal activity. Yet, what we saw additionally was that he was trying to actually not only just get married in his home country, Kuwait, not Syria, not Iraq, okay, not Afghanistan, but in Kuwait, a country that we don't normally hear too much of when we talk about terrorism or foreign conflicts. He had a career set up. He took a course and he got his qualification here in the UK to go abroad and become effectively a teacher there. So they ruined all of these prospects of his, and to an extent, the man felt like he was going to take his own life just to escape this hell that these British security services had created for him. And we know this because he's been in touch with some non-Muslim journalists. I don't know if it was a Guardian or a Times reporter, excuse me if I'm mistaken, but he reached out to a UK journalist, okay,
while he was here, saying that, I'm considering taking my own life. I'm like a dead man walking right now as it is, just to escape. He wants to end his life. So we can see that this is the way that Cage has painted a picture of Mwazi before becoming radicalized. It's not even painting a picture, it's just telling the story.
This is exactly what was happening.
This is exactly what happened.
This is how he was.
You need to understand that everything, there is a cause and there is a consequence to it. There's a cause, there is an effect to it.
That's right.
I think we've discussed this before. Like, you study in history. History is all about analysing the past, understanding what caused certain events to happen in order to not repeat them. That's usually the main gist behind history. You will study Nazi Germany and Hitler thoroughly to understand what caused this man to rise up to power and what was his beliefs. But you're not going to be called a terror apologist at that time. You're not going to be called a Nazi sympathizer, are you, to understand how he got there? So why is it the case that when we try to discuss about Mwazi, we try to discuss about the consequences of the actions of British foreign policy, American foreign policy, and the invasions, you're then called a terror apologist?
That's right. And let's be clear. One of the spokespersons for Cage recently said about this Mwazi situation, he said, we're not offering excuses. What we're offering are explanations as to how it happened, okay, and how he became person A and turned into person B. Okay, they talked about that, what Asim Qureshi describes as the trajectory from being this, ordinary young British man, all right, and then becoming the kind of person that we know of from what the media has reported. So this is really the discussion that they were having, and we're going to take a couple of texts, Brother Khabbab.
I think one of them says, I don't think Obama did a mistake saying that. He maybe was just telling the truth. I think we agree with the point.
Is that an anonymous text?
It's an anonymous text. I do agree. He is just telling the truth. But the mistake he made is he told the truth.
That's right.
As you know,
as a politician,
as a president of the United States of America, exactly. You don't tell the truth.
That's
rule number one.
Rule number one: don't tell the truth, especially on camera, guys. Okay. So, we definitely agree with our listener there who's texting in. Thank you for your text, brother or sister, whoever you are.
We've got another text coming in from Abdullah, and he says, has this news of Mr. Obama saying this hit any main news headlines? Why haven't media outlets in this country picked you up on this?
Well, you see, this is a very good question. Yes, he has said this, and it's on Vice News. And in fact, a lot of our listeners probably haven't heard about Vice News, even though they're doing some excellent work out there.
But you're talking about main headlines. You're going, where is the BBC? Where's the CNN?
How come the Daily Mail isn't talking about it?
Yeah, how come Abu Tahir isn't talking about it?
Exactly. How come Abu Tahir hasn't picked this story up? Why is it not a huge controversy now? And we're comparing that with the controversy that was kicked up when Cage did their press conference. It was as though it was an outrage. How dare Cage say what they said? They are apologists for ISIS. Yet today we have this recording from the President of the United States of America saying that actually ISIS, they grew out of Al-Qaeda, which was really a direct result of, and I'm paraphrasing, direct result of our invasion of Iraq. Okay.
Next time we should be a bit more clearer with our aiming.
So it appears that if Muslims pipe up with an explanation as to why this is happening and how you can prevent this from happening again, if there was a simple question as to how do we stop terrorism, the simple answer to that simple question would be stop meddling and causing bloodshed and violence in the Muslim world. Okay. If you stop doing that, naturally, there will be an end to terrorism. It's just a reaction. It's a reaction. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. We all know the law is clearly illegal to be a terrorist or to engage in acts of terrorism. All right, it's against the law. No Muslim would advise you to break the law. All right, so we're not even going to go there. So why is it? The question still stands. Why is it that Cage was saying this, and it was a huge controversy, and they were labelled and they were, paraded through the British press as apologists for ISIS? Now they can't even say the name Cage without saying controversial group that sympathise with Jihadi John. All sorts of nonsense, slanderous, libelous stuff that's being said about Cage. Yet within the same span of maybe 10 days or 2 weeks, Mr. Obama comes out and says, well, actually, ISIS is a direct result of our invasion in Iraq.
The only mistake he made was at the end of that clip, he didn't say, yo, by the way, Cage, you're right.
That's right. He should have just said, Cage, you guys were absolutely bang on there with your comments. And it's not just Cage, because as I said, MPAC have been saying the same thing. Hizb ut-Tahrir have been saying the same thing. I think many organizations such as IERA and individuals that do not represent a particular organization have been saying exactly the same thing. I would go as far as to say that even affiliate bodies of the Muslim Council of Britain have been pointing out this very same thing, that British foreign policy, American foreign policy in the Muslim land is actually creating terrorism. Okay, in fact, Moazzam wrote a piece I can't remember which publication it was for, one of the mainstream ones, and he said if he were a statesman, then the first thing he would campaign to do is secure the rights of the Palestinian people. This happened to be one of the main talking points for Osama bin Laden. Yeah, in fact, in his first video declaration of war, this man said very clearly that he wanted to see peace in Palestine. He wanted to see the Palestinian people returned to their land. Okay, so we can't just pretend that these guys are born twisted with a genetic hate for Americanism and the West. We need to have a more mature debate here. We need to be having a lot more of an intelligent and grown-up debate. We're shortly going to go to a quick break for all our brothers and sisters and our ladies and gentlemen that have joined us. Yes, Brother Khabbab.
I know, I could just see the article there. You obviously, because it was part of the same topic here.
Yeah,
which
I'm going to quickly rattle those. I'm not really read them.
Is the fact that obviously you mentioned that Muslim organizations, and a lot of people have been saying that the foreign policy has caused or led to radicalization, extremism, terrorism. And here you've got now the former Deputy Prime Minister, John Prescott, who came out very clearly and said, Tony Blair's bloody crusade has led to the radicalization of British Muslims.
And I'm so, glad to hear this change in tone from a British politician. Okay, he's a former Deputy Prime Minister, but he's gone a step further as to describe it as we are on this show. I know a lot of the Muslim organizations, they often cite quote-unquote foreign policy. That's a kind of euphemism for bloodshed and wanton violence that the British troops and the American forces go out there and meet on those indigenous populations. So really, hats off to John Prescott there for having said it how it is. And again, I quote, he says that Tony Blair's bloody crusades led to radicalization of British Muslims. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, perhaps we have a few young listeners join in, as we often do. Crusade is an English or Christian word for Christian jihad, basically.
In the Muslim lands.
So it's terrorism. Effectively, if jihad is terrorism, the Islamic version, then crusade should also be terrorism. So Tony Blair's bloody terrorist wars have led to radicalization of British Muslims. And is that such an alien concept to the human mind, that if there are some Muslims living in your country and you decide to go kill a few other Muslims in their, let's say, hundreds of thousands, say in Iraq, and you contribute to more of their deaths, say in Palestine than Afghanistan and many other places, is it such an alien concept that Muslims in your local area may be a little bit enraged about that? I think it would be the same reaction and same sentiment would be shared if British expats in Saudi Arabia suddenly heard that the Saudi Arabian authorities are waging war and killing English people on the English islands. I mean, if that was the case, English people in Saudi Arabia would be up in arms. They'd be, unhappy about, angered by this. There may be even one or two individuals who turn to violence as a result of that. I'm not saying that that's correct, but it's something that some people often find more viable when this kind of debate, this platform to discuss and to criticize and to politically dissent, this oxygen is cut off. When that oxygen is cut off, people often turn to violence. And that is why we often, when we started this whole series of the Security Council, we've always said we are champions of free speech. We say, as I don't know if who was it IRA or MRDF, one of the local organizations here, they started an initiative called Don't Hate, Debate. And I think that's an excellent, tagline to really use here, because that's exactly what we've been trying to epitomize here. Don't hate, let's debate. Okay, with that, we're going to go to a quick break and come back to you very shortly. Assalamu alaikum.
You're listening to The Security Council, a zero bull, straight talking, current affairs program.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Middle Path Radio, and you are listening to The Security Council. I'm going to give out our number again to those of you who just joined us. It's 07 477 080 248. That's 07 477 080 248. Alternatively, you can contact us. Sorry, Brother Khabbab. Alternatively, you can contact us on our Twitter account, which is at Middle Path Radio. One word, at Middle Path Radio. Don't forget to give us your nominations for who you think should be this week's Django of the Week. So that's hashtag Django of the Week without a D. That's JANGO of the Week. We got more text. We're going to read them out shortly. Yes, Brother Khabbab.
Those numbers going out was specifically for you. Yes, you.
Who's who?
Abul Tahir.
Abul Tahir.
We know you're listening.
Abul Tahir.
You were invited to the show, but you refused to accept our invitation.
Come on,
Mr. Sheffield graduate. Come down. Please. Call us in. Call into the show and
Studio Tayyam. Okay, Mr. Abu Tahir, we invite you to some tea
do come and join
and some
us.
biscuits in the studio.
Please do
we'll
share,
have a welcoming party
share
waiting for you.
your investigative journalism skills with us.
Absolutely. I mean,
So
we
we
need
can
to pick up some of those
really
sophisticated methods of yours, Mark.
Amazing
Just
photoshopping.
astounded.
Google.
I'm astounded. But before we get our teeth into that story, I wanted to wrap up the previous story where Obama admitted that that ISIS was a result of the American invasion, i.e., effectively what Muslims have been saying for years, that American wars and British wars and our bloodshed in Muslim lands is creating terrorism. On that point, I just wanted to say that yes, we mentioned John Prescott, and he did come out to say that actually it is these wars that the UK and Tony Blair has been waging that has radicalized Muslims, but also add to the fray former MI5 chief who delivers a damning verdict on the Iraq invasion. This is in The Guardian. Lady Eliza Manningham Buller tells Chilcot that invasion increased the terrorist threat and radicalized young British Muslims. This is no ordinary comment. She is, I think, giving her evidence or testimony at the Chilcot inquiry. I'm not sure if that's exactly accurate, but in any case, the former head of MI5 delivered a devastating critique of the invasion of Iraq today, saying it substantially increased the threat of terrorist attacks in Britain and was a significant factor behind the radicalization of young Muslims in the UK. I'm directly quoting from the article, which is not from today. So if you're wondering when did this happen, this was actually a couple of years ago, or exactly in the year 2010. So Lady Eliza Manningham Buller told the Chilcot inquiry into the UK's role in Iraq, "Our involvement in Iraq radicalized, for want of a better word, a whole generation of young people. Not a whole generation, a few among a generation who saw our involvement in Iraq and Afghanistan as being an attack upon Islam." I think we should end that point right there. So you've got the former MI5 chief coming to a legal inquiry saying exactly what people like Cage, MPAC, HT, affiliates of MCB have been saying over the years. This is absolutely nothing new, and I know their American counterparts, not that there's any kind of official affiliation amongst themselves, there are many other organizations abroad, like ISNA, and many others, the North African representative bodies out there, I forgot their abbreviated name, they've been saying the exact same thing. Who else has been saying this? Well, you may have heard of a gentleman called Michael Shoya. Michael Shoya, basically, he used to lead a special unit, part of the CIA, called the Bin Laden Unit. It was set up to track down the location and whereabouts of Osama bin Laden. But what does he have to say about the terrorists and where terrorism comes from and how Muslims are being radicalized? Well, he says, only a fool wouldn't know that our relationship with Israel causes us war with Muslims.
Whoa.
This is Michael Shoya, one of their top dogs from inside the CIA. Former high-level CIA officer Michael Shoya, a 22-year CIA veteran who was the head of the CIA unit tasked with capturing or killing bin Laden, okay? He is saying these very same words. I'm going to give you one more quote, one or two more. It says here, Congressman Stewart asked him this question. I would like you to explain very quickly, if you can, what you think the primary motivators are for Islamic jihadism. Michael Shoya replies saying, first, our support for the Israelis. End of the answer. I mean, he doesn't get, all heavy and historical and, lectury about this. He just says, firstly, it's our support for the Israelis. He's quite unequivocal. Okay, so I mean, the conversation goes on. It says here, our support for tyranny for over 50 years in the Muslim world is another reason why there is Islamic jihad. As a trigger, our presence on the Arabian Peninsula. So this is what he is pointing to. These are the first three things that he's pointed to. Supporting the dictators and the tyrannical regimes in the Muslim world, and the American / allied support for Israel is creating resentment and causing Islamic jihad in the Muslim world. So I'm not going to go over everything here. I'm going to give you 3 more items here to finish this story. Because Adam Taylor, with the Washington Post, he's titled an article called, well, it says, 3 times US foreign policy helped to what? To create the Islamic State, ISIS. 3 times US foreign policy helped to create the Islamic State, ISIS. It's by Adam Taylor. And you know what his first one is? He says, number 1 was the war in Afghanistan. This helped create ISIS. All right. Number 2, the war in Iraq. Obviously, Barack Obama just endorses this view that it was the war in Iraq that created ISIS. And lastly, strangely as well, it actually says that the death of Osama bin Laden created opportunity for ISIS. Okay. So
if Osama bin Laden was still alive today,
there probably would not have been any ISIS. Because what does he say? Interesting. What do you mean? You may think this is nonsense drivel on Middle Path Radio tonight. Well, what does Adam have to say? He says here, what made Baghdadi act so brashly? The killing of Osama bin Laden by US forces, okay, created a vacuum of authority in the world of jihadism that Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi managed to fill. Okay, he's quoting from some experts that he's been in touch with, quoting someone by the name of Bunzel. Okay, I can't give his full citation because I could have to go through the entire article, and it is a very lengthy article. But those are the 3 reasons: the invasion of Iraq, invasion of Afghanistan, okay, and of course the killing of Osama bin Laden. That is the opinion of this man. He isn't part of Cage. He isn't a Muslim from the sounds of things. And he is not brown, if any of this matters to the Islamophobic world. Of course it does. Okay? Because if he had been Muslim, and if he had a Muslim name, or if he were part of MPAC or HT or part of Cage, then of course he would only have been described as an apologist for ISIS. We've got to move on. Brother Khabbab, man, you got an axe to grind with this guy. This is our next agenda for tonight.
Abu, where are you, mate? I'm still waiting for your phone call. Maybe you just don't understand
Mr. Abu
English.
Tahir,
I'm not too sure.
have we got anything coming through there? Mr. Producer? We have reached out to Abu Tahir, in fairness.
We've
on
ensured
Twitter. He is
the
active
line
on
is
Twitter.
clean just for you to
Yeah,
call
we've
in.
given you a special VIP line tonight. We've cancelled all of our listeners from getting through.
It's called the Daily Fail line, so please do call in.
We are waiting for you to engage us. We've given you an opportunity to actually speak. Yes? Mr. Producer's from the background shouting if Abul Tahir actually knows Mufassil
Maybe
Islam.
you're related.
Mufassil Islam is in in two different worlds. They are as absurd as each other, but they are living in two different worlds. I don't see any relation there.
Parallel.
Except for the fact that they're probably both nutters. To be honest with you, so why? What's your infatuation, Mr. Khabbab, with this person, Abul Tahir?
Now, Abul Tahir, some of you may know him, some of you may not know him. For those who do not know him, please just visit Mushy Peas and you'll get a good download of his kind of background in his history. But he's come to light.
Mushy Peas recommends that you see your GP for a particular form of antiseptic cream that is required for
irritations,
a kind of soreness
in certain
that only Abul Tahir can create and cause. So anyway, he's a Daily Mail.
He's a Daily Mail.
Can I even call him journalist? Is
journalist.
okay?
He calls himself an investigative journalist.
Does the Daily Mail even have any journalists? Because when you open their link, even the one that Abul Tahir wrote, all I can see are pictures of I don't know who, Peter Andre or Victoria Beckham or Kim Kardashian. I don't necessarily call this journalism, and I think the British public have a certain
Let's
standard.
give the guy the benefit of the doubt.
So he's a journalist.
So we call him a journalist. He writes in the paper.
He's a tabloid journalist. Okay, you're right.
So now
he covers celebrity gossip.
With the whole Cage kind of issues that's been arising, and the continued
Cage shaking up the narrative, as it were.
The continued
rattling
onslaught,
the cage, as it was.
All the different Cage rattling the cage. Yeah,
they rattled the government cage. I'm telling you, they definitely did that.
Because they must have done, because
otherwise Mr. Cameron wouldn't have come out straight away to respond.
Every arm of this nation.
Mayor of London Boris Johnson wouldn't have had to speak about them, and Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond wouldn't have to have addressed the same issues that Cage has raised and the questions that Cage has asked. So definitely they've rattled the government.
Either
cage.
way, all the media have been obviously getting on their backs, and no less is the Daily Mail, one of the right-wing Islamophobic newspapers. As you could say,
newspapers is news. And does anybody believe that?
But anyway,
anymore?
The main issue here that you had is
even Russell Brand's come out with something called the truths. He said there's no news anymore. We need the truths.
Anyway, he decided to write an article now
about Cage.
Obviously about Cage
to continue the onslaught in smearing Cage and their credibility.
Obviously, the way they've done is all these weeks they've been picking up on the on brother Asim from Cage. Or the spokesperson for Cage, being really attacking him, trying to break
because he had a good education. That was a crime that he had committed.
Wealthy.
Such a terrorist that this man is. He's got wealthy, wealthy middle class. To be fair, but that's
it's too wealthy for a brown man.
For a brown man,
basically,
that's too much.
Yeah.
It's too. He's enjoying privileges that are only exclusive to the white upper class.
But anyway,
and the masters of
after all those attacks, now he decided to turn his attention to somebody who's very beloved to, you would say, the whole Muslim community.
Absolutely,
which is Brother Muazzam Beg. As we all know, and we've all learned to know of his ordeal and his plight, especially being detained in Afghanistan and then taken and tortured and taken to Guantanamo Bay, and then afterwards released without charge. So we all know him from that, and he is he is the outreach director of Cage. So he decides to now start an attack on Brother Muazzam. Now, this is probably the best investigative journalism I've ever come across in my life.
This pushes Daily Mail's bar to a different level.
I just have to say
depth. I was going to say, but yeah, a different depth.
I just have to say that I think anybody who reads this would be just wow. You'll be literally saying, "Wow, I've never knew journalism could be so good."
Well, this is the title of the article. It says, "Did Cage director train Jihadi John?"
Ooh. Amazing.
Cue the Twilight Zone.
Just a question.
The soundtrack there.
Just go.
Did Cage direct a train Jihadi John?
I don't know. This is the best part here.
Mail on Sunday uncovers new evidence.
Uncovers.
Wow. They've just uncovered this new evidence that links apologists for ISIS butcher to his desert weapons camp.
So basically, he's trying to say that links apologists for ISIS, which is Mozambique,
apparently,
to his desert weapons camp.
He forgot to say allegedly.
Well, basically, you meant to say that Jihadi John was supposed to be.
So let's read some of the sub-points he's brought here, straight underneath the headline. Director of Cage may have been involved in training. Notice the emphasis here is on the word may have been involved in training Jihadi John in Syria. Or he may not have.
Next point. Photograph.
Photograph appears. This is the best part. Photograph appears to place Muazzam Beg at the same camp in late 2012. Let's just go straight to that photograph because there's no point in reading the rest of the drivel because here it is. There's the photograph.
So, there's a photograph basically of masked men in balaclavas holding guns which look like AK-47s. I don't know what they are really, but I just assume that's what the name of it.
And there's a number of masked men. We don't know which ones.
And there is a man.
I can count right now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 guys just from this cropped picture.
And then basically what he has done, he has circled one man
with the balaclava,
who's a bit more prominent in the front of the picture with a balaclava, holding his gun right-handed, and then he has an individual that is behind him, which has been written as Abu Umar Ash-Shishani. Again, and then they've got a picture of Mozambique that's dropped in there, photoshopped into the picture.
He's not actually in the picture.
It's actually a picture of when he left prison, so if I'm correct.
After he
was released from Belmarsh, I think that was the picture.
There's I've seen the full picture of him. He's just standing outside of a building, probably here in the UK or wherever. It's just a picture, a separate picture. They've just
wearing shades
cut around that picture, and they just literally dropped him in to this picture of these ISIS lads holding their guns. They haven't even got the rest of his body. They've just got his head.
Amazing. He must be buried in the ground.
Was in Syria training Jihadi John without the rest of his body.
And this picture is uncovering basically all of that information.
How on earth did he manage to demonstrate how to fire a gun to Jihadi John without using his arms? That's the real question here.
Now, just for the benefit of doubt and argument, let's just say he didn't intend to put that picture there to show that this is evidence he was there, rather just to show his face, saying, "Oh, this is the individual we are referring to," and then he obviously highlighted the pictures. So we'll give Abu Talib a benefit of the doubt. Let's be fair. We're impartial. We like to be non-partisan.
Okay, all right. So Abu Tahir has uncovered some new evidence, apparently, because we know that Muazzam Beg has been investigated for these allegations. But the funny thing is, this new evidence is supposed to suggest that Muazzam Beg was in Syria. The problem with that point is that actually Muazzam Beg has always told everyone that he was in Syria, and that he has been to Syria.
And the paper tried to...
He's on record.
The paper almost tried to say, we have uncovered... I'm sorry, but you don't really uncover anything when he's gone out publicly in more or less all the newspaper outlets. He's written articles
on their own website
saying, I've been to Syria to look into the whole issue of rendition and torture and British complicity.
I'm going to be investigating any alleged role of the UK Secret Service in torture and so on and so forth. In fact, such evidence was uncovered
by the Mail.
By the Mail on Sunday, namely Abu Tahir probably himself, that he was only stating that Muazzam Beg had already put it on record that I've actually informed the British police or the authorities here in the UK before I went to Syria that I am planning to go to Syria. In fact, I am going on Syria. I thought I'd let you guys know. All right. He sat down with the authorities here in the UK, with his legal team present, and he explained. He willingly went forward and actually made contact with them. He said this is probably the best way to go to Syria without raising an eyebrow. I'll just, declare my intentions right from the get-go, and I am going to be investigating you guys' role in your alleged role in torture and other abuses.
He mentioned he went to Syrian camps. He went to met with many individuals and many fighters who eventually went into make into ISIS. So here the Mail on Sunday goes a bit more better on this, and Abu Tahir really gets really spot on here. Official sources have confirmed to the Mail on Sunday the existence of a photograph of Mr. Beg with a Syrian camp commander, who also appears in a video with a man believed to be Jihadi John, apparently taken at the same camp.
So many qualifiers in that statement. Official sources. Who are your official sources? Was it MI6? I mean, you know, was it the Met Police? I mean, who has confirmed? There's no mention of them. The existence of a photograph, you know, this photo exists of Mr. Beg with a Syrian camp commander. He already said that he is going to be in Syria, meeting these kinds of people because they're the ones making the allegations about torture and abuse. Okay? But he also appears in a video with a man believed to be Jihadi John. Nobody knows if he's really Jihadi John. There's a lot of masked men in ISIS, if you haven't noticed by now. Okay? And it's apparently taken at the same camp. Again, not 100% sure that it is.
By the way, if you read this article yourself, you see the number of times it says apparently. I think this is the
Allegedly,
best part of it. Yeah, it says here, in the photograph, Mr. Beg is sitting around a table with Abu Umar al-Shishani, who is the leader of the militant group Kataib al-Muhajirin, yeah, and a British jihadi Rabah Tahari with other militants, apparently sipping coffee. This is just,
how could he be, you know, sipping coffee? You know, he
apparently
seems to be,
though,
apparently,
no,
they're not sure.
It's not sure. It could be
it's
something
important
else.
to be, you know, to show some integrity in our journalism, to add words like apparently. And this is where Abu Tahir has demonstrated his integrity by saying that it's possible that it could be tea. It may be a glass of water. We're not entirely sure. So apparently he was sipping coffee.
And a source who does not want to be named said the picture definitely puts Beg in Syria. Well, hang on a minute. The man, he said it himself. He said it so many times. I've been to Syria. I've been to Syria. I've been to Syria.
You know, to wrap this up, right?
The whole pictures.
To wrap this up, right? Muazzam Beg was in Syria.
He went to Syria.
Except the thing is that Muazzam Beg was not in Syria at the same time that Muhammad Emwazi or Jihadi John
the point being,
was in Syria.
Brother Muazzam went to Syria. He did all of his things that he was doing in Syria, gathering information.
He never denied it.
He came back to the UK.
Fully
he
declared.
talked about it very publicly. About a year or so later, he is then arrested and is held at Belmarsh. At that same point, while Brother Muazzam is held in Belmarsh, in prison,
being investigated
for ridiculous accusations and crimes,
false claims.
Yeah, that's at that moment is when Muhammad Emwazi then leaves the UK and go to Syria. So
you're trying to say Jihadi John wasn't even in Syria at the time when Muazzam Beg was in Syria.
Basically, to go even further, I think Brother Muazzam has the most strongest cast iron alibi possible to say that he did not train Jihadi John, which is basically Her Majesty Prison Service.
That's right, and just the, you know, absurdity of Abu Tahir's standard of journalism here. It's just you know, astounding to find him making these kinds of blunders.
The picture that he used to say that he believes this was Jihadi John.
In fairness, sorry to interrupt you. We did mention that he was being investigated and that they had kept him, you know, in Belmarsh. They had released him. No charges were brought against him. No wrongdoing was found, as far as we know. He hasn't been convicted of any kind of offence or terror offence at all. So that needs to be put on the record as well. If we're saying that he was investigated and put in prison, a lot of our listeners probably don't know this. So he was actually tried in Guantanamo. Well, not tried, held in Guantanamo Bay. Prior to that, in Bagram in Afghanistan, and then back in the UK in the Supermax prison Belmarsh. Yet he hasn't been convicted of a single terror offence. What does that say about you? And you may be thinking, what is he doing in Syria? Why is he collecting? Well, he actually works for a civil liberties / human rights advocacy group that helps victims of abuse and harassment. That's his job. This is what he gets paid to do, guys. All right? This is what he does. And that's why it was fully declared that he went to Syria, and he made it perfectly clear his reasons as to going to Syria. So,
but obviously, one of the things before even that information came out about the time and place of where Brother Muazzam and where Jihadi John was, the picture that he used was just literally of any random guy who's got a balaclava on. But the thing is, he was holding his gun right-handed. And as we will all know from all of the pictures we've seen, and the famous picture of Jihadi John where he's got the knife pointing at the camera while he's talking, you would know that he's left-handed.
That's right.
So, again, I think he's been completely discredited at all levels.
Yeah.
You know, this article was just a joke.
I think Daily Mail were literally, you know, they've.
And we really do hope that
they were
Brother
clutching
Muazzam
at
does
straws,
kind
and
of
they thought, you know,
soothe the
let's
backside
send
of them.
our attack dog Abu Tahir to go and do some damage, and it's really backfired on Daily Mail. I mean, if their reputation wasn't bad enough for being shoddy journalists, doing some tabloid celebrity gossip style reporting. Then Abu Tahir, thanks to him, has launched Daily Mail to a new height of shoddiness.
And it's just amazing. I think that kind of quickly links that, because we are running out of time, so we should try to bring in his
well
colleague.
Before you do bring his colleague in, I just want to say that Abu Tahir is not being picked on unfairly. We have actually put the picture on our Twitter feed of the so-called new evidence. And the picture that is supposed to place Muazzam Beg in the camp next to Jihadi John, training him up, well, you can go and check for yourself and see if this picture even holds any kind of water. So yeah, go check our Twitter account. It's at Middle Path Radio. Go check it out at Middle Path Radio. You'll find that picture right there. But about Abu Tahir, Abu Tahir is very well known for writing anti-Islamic, anti-Muslim articles.
Basically, he's an Islamophobe.
He's an Islamophobe.
He's basically a coconut.
He's a paid lackey of the establishment, and the Islamophobic establishment, rather. Okay, so some of his articles, and he's written quite a number of them. The internet gas.
He specializes in literally Islamophobic articles.
That's right. Hellfire Muslim teachers at Trojan Horse School warned 6-year-olds about white prostitutes. Private school chief linked to Islam Trojan Horse plot says stone all adulterers to death. Death threats to UK's top Muslim MP for voting for the gay marriage. Grooming of girls by Asian gangs fueled by unhappy arranged marriages to cousins, claims the Muslim peer. I mean, the list goes on. This guy is employed simply to be Islamophobic. And you know how the Islamophobes do it very cleverly? So I'm not racist. All these articles are written by a brown lad. Yeah.
I can't be racist. My best friend's a black man.
That's right. Our paper's not racist. We've got a brown guy writing about this. He's a black dude. Yeah, so you can't accuse us of being Islamophobic. This man's a Muslim. He's a Muslim that wrote it. So seriously, this is old tricks that they're pulling out here. And Abu Tahir, he has form for being an Islamophobe. So don't be surprised if we're picking on him today. He very much deserved it. All right, so Abu Tahir, mate, if you're listening, do get in touch with us. We did try and reach out to you.
You're ranking quite highly on the Django of the Week.
We're feeling that you might take this trophy tonight for being Django of the Week. Especially for that shoddy picture where you just plastered a separate picture of Muazzam Beg next to Jihadi John.
So while you're sitting on your laptop writing up your article about Middle Path Radio for tomorrow's paper, please just try and phone in and
give us your side and perspective. All right, if we've been unfair a little bit on you, mate, then come and tell us that we're wrong. All right, now tell us.
But your colleague, I must say, the next day is your colleague. Yes, and then the picture of Mr. Abu Tahir, as you may be wary of. How does this man look like? It's on our Twitter, and you can see he's next to the irritant cream.
So if he does approach you, brothers and sisters, I do say that beware of cooperating with him. I can't tell you what to do, but beware, because he is known to spin some anti-Islamic, anti-Muslim rhetoric that only benefits the Islamophobic cause. Okay, so beware of this Bangladeshi man by the name of Abu Tahir.
Now, ironically, his colleague, Inda Deep Baines.
What did she do?
Now, in all honesty, if you check, we talked about the long list of articles Abu Tahir has written. She's kind of the opposite in terms of she hasn't really done Islamophobic articles before, and this seems to be her first one.
She's done a couple,
but not
just a couple, but nowhere near the same scale as Abu Tahir.
So now, obviously, she's decided the next day to write an article about one now of the another Cage person from Cage the next day, and which was Kerry Bullivant. who was obviously one of the persons that was alongside Asim Qureshi, who at the press conference that Cage gave regarding Jihadi John. Now, she decided to bring up basically, the headline says, I don't know what this even is. What is Luvies? I don't know what that is. Line up to star in, Jihadi John apologist film.
Well, just read it however it's pronounced. It says, Lovies line up to star in Jihadi John apologist film. Ben Kingsley among actors committed to movie written by member of a group who called ISIS killer beautiful man.
So you can see here straight away, he's trying to say here basically
she is trying
that
to
the
say
film is about Jihadi John, effectively,
and all these actors
and it's written
and actresses
by the one who called Jihadi John beautiful.
Yeah, and all these actors and actresses are cozying up next to this ISIS apologist. So it's really strange that I don't understand the point of interest in this story. Because
anyway, basically, if you break
what's the point,
break it down in the end, the main point of it is
well, let me just read. Hold on, it says Sir Ben Kingsley and Emily Watson among stars due to work on the film. It has reportedly been co-written by Cage spokesman Kerry Bullivant. Dun 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 dun. This film was co-written by Kerry Bullivant. Alright? The former terror suspect described Mohammed Emwazi as beautiful. Check this out. He's a former terror suspect. Kerry Bullivant was, under a terrorism prevention something order. It's like a house arrest kind of thing. It's a TPIM, they call it. And, he was subjected to that for a very long time, to the extent that he felt he was losing his mind. It's very draconian and it's very inhibitive. And guess what? At the end of all of that, the judge found that there was absolutely no wrongdoing on the part of Kerry Bullivant. Just to remind our listeners, Kerry Bullivant doesn't happen to be a brown man. He's not black, but he is a Muslim. He's a white Muslim.
Basically, it's part of the brown man clique, as they would say.
Yeah, well, he's sold out from the Aryan Brotherhood and the white race. He's joined the Muslims, those Muslimics. He's a Muslimic. And so, of course, he was subjected to this TPIM, this kind of what they call a control order, trying to control a person who had done absolutely nothing wrong. And his name's been cleared. He was not convicted of any kind of terror offence. So it's, very convenient for Inderdeep Baines, I believe, an Indian writer,
in all honesty,
to say that he was the former terror suspect and that he described Mohammed Emwazi as beautiful. Check out this double falsity here, because not only was he cleared of any kind of terrorism allegations, but apparently he called Mohammed Emwazi beautiful. But and we know that he didn't do that. It's on video, for crying out loud. He said
Asim Qureshi is the one who said he was a beautiful man.
And in any case, even if Kerry did say that, he said that when we used to know him,
was a beautiful man.
He used to be a beautiful man. He used to be a very, a kind guy. He was a gentle person.
Previous tense.
Yeah. And obviously that kind of thing just flies,
But
past.
anyway, the thing is, we don't really want to go too detailed into it. It's more about what's the aftermath of this article in relation to the writer, the journalist.
Yeah.
Obviously, in here she's just blabbering on about some stuff, but the gist of it is basically this
Kerry
thing.
co-wrote
Kerry
the
basically
script.
he didn't co-write the script. In the end of it, really, five years ago, he gave his story, because the film is about basically people who have been kind of harassed and kind of what's called the secret evidence.
Evidence was being used against
he is
them.
a person, part of many individuals who gave some of their story. That's it, basically.
But what do you think this article achieves by
this article is basically trying to stir up
smear?
this whole thing where the actors would eventually say, hang on a minute, I don't want nothing to do with this film, and basically distance themselves purely because Kerry was involved in it, in basically in order to damage his reputation and any future prospect of any people working with him, or anything along those lines, basically.
So it's another form of character assassination, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Where they're simply saying, this guy's an ISIS apologist, he's a former terror suspect, do you guys really want to be associated with him? Does your film really want to be associated with an ISIS apologist? Based on all these false premises, you've got people maybe getting a little bit worried. It's bad publicity for the film. What it means for the filmmakers. So they probably want to distance themselves as a result.
The point being here is, I don't want to really get into so much of this nitty-gritty of her articles, because it's really actually just error-free and useless.
Yeah,
But I'm more interested in Inderdeep. I'm really much more interested in her.
All right.
Now this lady who's gone around and decided to kind of throw these accusations around about terror apologists and all of those kind of things. Well, let's see what you've got in your cupboard.
She isn't so squeaky clean herself now.
No.
Is she, Khabab?
Now, just by a little bit of investigative journalism by some individuals, which we saw on Twitter.
Just looking at her responses that she's been getting after tweeting that article.
And just kind of putting the puzzle together. Well, she obviously seems to have some relationship with this charity. This Sikh charity called Khalsa Aid.
Khalsa Aid.
Yeah, so when she was kind of prompted by a tweet regarding it, she just said, "Oh, why are you bringing a charity into it that does good work? You know, it's got nothing to do with this. You know, just leave the charity out." You know, and then it seems like some other individuals must have done some digging. And
what was the point that tweet was making when he?
The point was trying to refer to saying is that maybe you should kind of leave Cage alone and look into your own kind of charities and you know, it kind of just who are you supporting?
She's been supportive of Khalsa Aid,
and then ironically enough, it seems to be the case that she deleted a tweet, which basically didn't say she's got nothing to do with it. She just said, I merely retweeted a tweet by this charity that does good work. It's got nothing to do with it, so just leave them out. So she didn't just merely retweet a charity. She's actually a bit more involved in that charity than...
How is this relevant?
No, this is a bit relevant because then she seems to go on and delete a tweet which was managed to be saved, it seems like, before it was deleted, which actually shows that she is actually a volunteer and attended the volunteer induction.
So she's actually a volunteer.
She's a volunteer of this charity. Now, who is this charity?
And why did that tweet bring that up?
You know, it's interesting to know that actually this charity is indeed, lo and behold, terror apologists themselves.
So this charity is
actually supporters of terrorism and extremism in India.
And here in the UK, some of those individuals tried to conduct a terrorist attack here on UK soil.
4 individuals who actually tried to go out and carry out that attack in order to get reprisal on Indian general who was responsible
for whatever reason.
For something.
Now you're becoming an Indian terror apologist by describing those
I'm sorry
reasons.
About that.
Okay,
but basically,
the point is that.
But we should know. There is an article here from the Hindu Times.
This charity supports, these terrorists.
It says here that Punjab-based BKI operatives were receiving money from their UK-based associates, but Balbir Singh Bains. I hope it's no association to you. And Jogga Singh and some front outfits like the Sikh Organisation for Prisoner Welfare and Khalsa Aid to commit terrorist acts in India. So actually they're sending money to BKI operatives to carry out acts of terror. So a charity funding terror.
Funding terrorism.
Oh.
And you Ndidi Baines, are a supporter and a volunteer for this charity, by the way, are now pointing outwards at Cage for being apologists for terror when they obviously aren't. It's a bit rich, don't you think, Ms. Ndidi Baines?
And on top of that, I think there were some other articles that were written by former
and it was interesting
employees
to see
of the charity.
What did Kerry actually say, because he tweeted back at her. Kerry, because her article was all dedicated in maligning and smearing Kerry for being allegedly being a terror apologist, and he replied by saying something along the lines of, if you live in a glass house, you shouldn't be throwing stones. So it was a very smart reply, I'd say, on behalf of Kerry. Because he'd obviously read the same tweets that we've all seen now on her timeline. And, it's quite clear that she's supporting charities that are allegedly funding terrorism, okay? That are accused of financing terrorists. So, if that's the case, Ndidi Baines, then how dare you point your finger at a man who's himself already gone through a huge, miscarriage of justice.
And there's another tweet that he actually made. He said, you shouldn't accuse people of being terror apologists when A, it's not true, and B, you openly support charities that do just that.
Exactly. So,
So-
you know, very, very funny how
Just to let you know about
journalism works.
Khalsa Aid, there's a lot more to it as well. Not just terror apologies, there's so many other issues actually with them, which
Yeah,
can
you
be
know,
easily found.
non-violent extremism is what
You know, you're talking
what
about
the
even,
UK government's
you're
calling
talking
it
about
these
also
days.
taking funds, embezzling money, you know, that's for charitable money and other things. But, you know, I'll be surprised if the Charity Commission if they even do look at it, because...
So in the deep, be careful next time you open a can of worms like that based on lies and slanderous claims on your article.
But you
And
just
really, Daily
basically
Mail
what you
should
see-
know better than to employ this kind of journalist, this third-rate style of journalist, the likes of Abul Tahir and Indadi Baines. And to be honest with you, had it been anybody else, let's say, for example, had it been Andrew Gilligan, we would have said exactly the same thing. And when it was John Ware, we did say exactly the same thing. So we need to move on, Brother Khabbab.
I think we
because
need to
time
wrap
is
it up with the last one, because he is the
Time is-
nominee of
We've
one of the
actually-
nominees.
We've actually exceeded our time.
He is one of the nominees of Django of the Week, and I think we can wrap it up with.
All right, let's just say, Michael Gove, right? Michael Gove kicked up a furore over allegations of a Trojan horse plot by Muslim extremists infiltrating
Fundamentalists, hardliners.
English schools, right? And he created this huge controversy, and people were hysteric about, oh my goodness, our children are being radicalized by Muslim extremist teachers and so on. So there's a plot to take over the schools up and down the UK, and they launched a number of investigations, and all sorts of names were flying, all sorts of conclusions, foregone conclusions were being presented, all sorts of fear was being mongered, and it was only adding, it was peddling hate is what I see it as. They were simply fueling the existing fear of Muslims and their religion Islam, and leading to more hate crime. I would say directly leading to more hate crime against Muslims, as we've got already a few stories to talk about today, but we can't actually cover them. All right. So Michael Gove thought, he was the former education secretary. He was secretary at the time.
Kicked out.
I think he got kicked out basically. In any case,
Bumbling
the
buffoon.
damage was already done. The damage was already done. This Zionist. And Zionism,
Self-professed Zionist.
yeah, this self-professed Zionist actually has gone and created this reputational damage of a number of schools, but generally damaged the reputation of the Muslim community at large. And this is a vulnerable ethnic minority or religious minority in the UK. So now come the conclusion, the
Fair
actual
enough, he actually
findings of
damaged
these.
his own reputation by saying, "Oh, we knew about it, but we as the government did nothing about it." So he
Right.
actually kind of shot himself in the foot at the same time. As
So a
well.
number of inquiries were launched as usual. Let's look into these so-called allegations. Although we've already told everybody that there is a serious threat of extremism in our schools, let's actually look into the fact whether there's whether there's any basis for this. And guess what? The findings have been unequivocally that there's no grounds to say that there was any plot by extremists to take over these schools. In fact, if you read the Times, and by the way, you do need a subscription to read this full article, but it says here in the Times that the article headline says, Gove was wrong about Muslim plot for city's schools, say MPs. Okay, a cross-party group of MPs have rejected claims of a plot by hardline Muslims to infiltrate schools in Birmingham and force them to introduce an Islamic agenda in their classrooms and culture. Okay, and there's more, but let's quickly jump to the BBC and let's just not bother even reading any quotes from there. It echoes exactly the same sentiment, that there was no grounds to say that extremists were infiltrating the schools and were trying to radicalize the curriculum there, or whatever that they were teaching there. It was alleged last year that extremists had tried to take over several schools in Birmingham to advance radical interpretations of Islam. However, we find that this is completely groundless. All right, and in fact, BBC article goes to say that the MPs have criticised a worrying lack of coordination between 5 overlapping official inquiries into the so-called Trojan horse affair. Interesting to find BBC saying so-called Trojan horse affair when their very same article says that there was no Trojan horse plot at all. Okay, so in the report, the Education Committee investigates how the DFE, Ofsted and other bodies reacted to the allegations of extremism in Birmingham and draws out wider lessons for the entire school system, saying that no evidence of extremism or radicalization was found by any of the inquiries in any of the schools involved. I quote again, the chairman of the Education Committee, Graham Stewart, he said that apart from one incident in one school, no evidence of extremism or radicalization was found by any of the inquiries in any of the schools involved. End of.
So Gove basically decided to just be like the boy who screamed wolf and just screamed wolf, and then basically got caught out.
This is the thing, the damage is already done. The British public have already got it in their heads that Muslims are infiltrating schools and trying to push an extremist agenda. People are not going to be reading now that, oh, all of that was a load of tosh, a whole load of Islamophobic drivel. People are not interested anymore. The harm has already been done because it's more sensationalist to say that there is an extremist plot, and that's what piques people's interest. That's what people, open their and raise their eyebrows to. This kind of headline doesn't really go anywhere, and unfortunately, not enough coverage of this is actually out there right now in the British press. We do have some stories that we'd love to go into, but we can't. But we just like to read the headline. A teenager who was jailed for a racist attack on a 79-year-old pensioner, he's had his sentence cut, for good behavior. This young man stomped on the head of a 79-year-old man for being a Muslim, calling him some sort of Islamophobic terms, and he stomped on his head and cracked his skull, leaving him severely damaged. In another incident, Amanda Lowe launches into a racist attack in Manchester city centre with the children in tow. This is in the Huffington Post. And really, I can't really go into it. Several individuals with her actually participated in attacking this man, and Lowe, 26, who is now pregnant with her third child, started the trouble by calling the victim a effing Paki and a terrorist. So this is the kind of result that we see that the Muslim community face on a regular basis because of the Islamophobic headlines and these false allegations and the government narrative and the rhetoric in the media. All of this leads to precisely this kind of attitude, calling victims an effing Paki and a terrorist. And then viciously, violently assaulting this man, leaving him with stitches and nasty bruises. Mr. Nisar was going home from work across Piccadilly Gardens, which was crowded with families and children enjoying the evening sunshine, when Lowe, who was drinking alcohol, there's an apology for racism right there, Apparently, if you're drinking alcohol, let's put that in there, that makes it kind of lesser of a crime. She began shouting the abuse. Mr. Nisar told Lowe's boyfriend, Wesley Earls, to control his woman, but Earls responded by punching the victim to the ground. Lowe's friend Daniel Ray also waded in and punched Mr. Nisar in the head as the trio pounced together. This was all caught on CCTV, And Lowe was caught, this is the woman, repeatedly kicking at and stamping on Mr. Nisar's head before the fight was broken up, and all three returned to the children yards away, with the youngest in a pram, probably all in eyeshot. Learning. This is what you call radicalization of young people. This is what you call extremism on the streets of the UK. But let's not talk about that. They had a little bit of a drink, innit? It's all right. We get a little bit leery when we have a bit of a drink. You know what I mean? We got to call people Packies.
No, imagine that was the other way
around. Let's go Packy bashing. Imagine that was the other way around, as you said, Brother Khabbab. And I think we'll leave this program tonight on that question and bombshell. Who is Django of this week? Who's the Django, Mr. Producer? You think it's Abu Tahir?
I just don't know, but I would give it to all four of them because it's just been amazing.
We are split tonight, and I think it will have to go with the producers' say so on this. But I was gonna vote for Mr. Well, so excuse me, I shouldn't say that. I don't vote for him, but I was gonna put forward President Barack Hussein Osama, because he had his Bush moment there. His opening remark to Vice News was, well, actually, we created ISIS. And then he just kind of stumbled into saying, well, he was unintended and he was all of that. Shall we go for a double, Django? Nah, it defeats the purpose. It needs to be one. Mr. Producer, you still sticking with Abu Tahir? All right.
Abu, it was a close one between you and your colleague, I got to say as well. Your colleague, oh
my God.
But I just think because of the fact that Abu wrote that article, that's far worse. India at least tried to, kind of put things together and make it sensational.
But it was worse for her as well, because she was the pot calling the kettle black, as it were, basically. Anyways, it goes to Abu this week. You, Abu,
we know you're listening.
The Django of the week.
I know you were up for so many awards.
Congratulations, my son.
This was probably the biggest one that you'll have. You're a shame.
You are a disgrace to the human race. Without any further ado, brothers and sisters, tune in every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. on Middle Path Radio. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.